So what we are going to talk about is you have an OSS project, right? It might be working great, it might be working okay, and you thought that now I want to start a company around it, right? A company by definition means something which is going to be profitable over time. It has to have revenues, right? So what are the things that you need to look for, or what's the kind of a checklist that would help you figure out whether you can make it a commercial entity or not? Even if, let's say, you have not started an OSS project, but if you want to start an OSS project, which you think might convert into a commercial company later on, what are the things, kind of the things that you should take care of today, right? So those are some of the things that I'm going to touch upon. These are the things, by no means I'm trying to tell that this is an exhaustive list, right? This is a list which I have seen working for us. I think this is definitely one of the things that you should take care of if you are thinking of planning of starting an OSS company overall. Right, so one of the most important things is what is your OSS motivation, right? You can think of it, oh, I want to start a company, I want to do a startup, and that's why I'm going to do an OSS today. Or you may say that, oh, there is a really interesting problem that I want to solve in collaboration. So the keyword over here is collaboration, because in both the cases you are still solving a problem. But if you want to solve it collaboratively, if you believe that you would want to go out and find from people as to what's the right way to solve this problem, what would resonate with most of the folks, then OSS is the right way. And paradoxically, if you are doing it collaboratively, then probably it's the best thing to build a business. Why? Because now you're building something which people want. If you're able to build a community around it, that means this is a problem with which most of the people resonate, right? So it seems paradoxical. Of course, there are a few gotchas that you need to take care of. But if you're able to build something with the community collaboratively, then there is a higher chance of it being successful, at least as a project, even if not as a commercial company. I'll talk more about the other points which you are required to take care of if you want to build a commercial company around the OSS, right? So one of the things I think most of the people confuse with is they think that OSS is a business model. OSS is not a business model, right? OSS is a go-to-market strategy. If you want to start a company, OSS can be a go-to-market strategy. How do you reach out to people? How do you make people aware that this project exists or this solution exists? That's what OSS is. It's a go-to-market strategy. It's not a business model, right? If you look at the OSS charter, there is no prescribed mechanism by which they are saying that this is how you should commercialize, right? Of course, they have certain do's and don'ts to say that what constitutes an OSS and what doesn't constitute an OSS, so that people don't abuse this term for the commercial gains, but at the same point of time, they are not restricting you or prescribing you as to how you should commercialize it, right? I think and what you should be careful about, or what you should focus on is, OSS is a great thing if you want to build standards for that particular problem that you are solving, right? You can look at, I don't know how many of you folks are from DevOps stream, but there are very well-known names. For example, HashiCorp, right? HashiCorp, with its different open source products, could create the standards for the industry, like how things should be done. If you look at MongoDB, MongoDB did a similar kind of a thing. The APIs of MongoDB are being even, so Azure launched Cosmos DB. I don't know how many of you know it. But what they did was, for the Cosmos DB, they said that we are going to use the same APIs as MongoDB, right? That's the power of the open source system. You are creating default standards, right? And as I was saying earlier, so you get also the faster feedbacks, right? So if I'm sitting in a corner building something, I may be building something that I think is great. Everybody would like it. But once I take out to people, they will look at it, they may not like it. But if I'm building in an OSS community along with the feedback from the people, my chance of success, at least in figuring out, it may also be the case that this is not a problem at all, which they care about. And that's just okay. Because you have learned it sooner than later that this is a problem that nobody cares about, so I should not be working on this problem. Great. Fail fast, right? So if these are the things that you are looking at, that you should think of OSS, right? You should not think that, oh, OSS will help me make a lot of money. In fact, in the later side, I'll talk about why there is a higher chance of failure. Even if you have created a project which is very useful, there is a higher chance of failure that you may never be able to commercialize it properly, right? Now, if I talk about the business models which have been built around OSS systems, right? There are three primary business models which have been built around it. The oldest one is the services and subscription model. Red Hat is a huge example of it, right? So multi-billion-dollar company, great exit, very well-known name, right? So what they did was they said that most of the things that we are creating, in fact, all of the things that we are creating are free to use, right? If you want certain guarantees around it, if you want SLAs to be managed, if you want security patches to be provided to you sooner, or you want us to help you figure out what's the best way to do things, right? What is the right bouquet to use? Which OSs should I use? How should I combine them together to make them work? Then they would charge you money, right? Otherwise, they would be like, oh, it's free, you can use it, you don't even have to talk to us. Right? So that's the services in the subscription model. The problem with this model usually is that the stickiness is less, right? So unless and until you're talking to the enterprises, which are very large enterprises, and they would want somebody to provide consulting kind of a thing, this model has higher rate of customers leaving you out. Because once they get a know-how of the system by talking to you, figuring things out, they may say, oh, I'm now comfortable. And if you're charging quite a good amount of money, they may say, oh, we can stop this engagement or we can reduce this engagement, right? It's all the same. The other system which has become popular is the open core model, right? In open core model, what they do is the main core of the system is open source. And that by itself, understand this, that by itself should provide enough value to the users, because if that piece is not providing value to the users, users will not adopt it. So whether it's open source or not, it would not matter. So that core should provide enough value, but then what they do is they say that, oh, there are tons of other things which most of the companies might not use. So as a startup, your requirements might be different, and as a larger enterprise company, your requirements might be different, right? And that's where this open core model works beautifully, where they say that, okay, these are the basic set of requirements which most of the companies which are smaller, mid-ish range, they would need it. And we would build it in the open space as an open core. And then we would provide a lot of capabilities on top of it for which we are going to charge, right? So that's the open core model. There are companies which follow it. Earlier, Elasticsearch was also following the same model where they had an open core and then they were providing capabilities on top of it. And this is right now, this is one of the models which is extensively used by a lot of companies. The third thing, which is like, I think it's the most recent one among all of these three, is the SaaS model, right? In the SaaS model, what they are saying is that this is a system, you can self-host it, but if you're self-hosting it, you would have to take the maintenance headache, right? We can host it for you, and that way you get all the benefits, but you don't have to worry about the maintenance, right? And if you see, a lot of new companies are doing the same thing. Even Elasticsearch is now following the same mechanism where they have, and Kafka, for the Kafka Confident also is doing the same thing, wherein they are saying that, oh, if you want to self-host it, you can host it, but then you have to deal with the maintenance of this thing, upgradation of the things. And if you sort of host onto us, then all of it is taken care of automatically, right? So this gives one of the advantages to the companies, because now people are aware of Kafka. People are looking out for Kafka. They might be using a Kafka today, and when tomorrow it becomes a problem, they'll say, oh, who can help me manage this stuff? So as companies are scaling up, they'll automatically start looking for somebody who can provide these values, right? So these are the three models that we look at. Then let me talk about some of the commercialization inhibitors, right? So just because as I was saying earlier, just because your open source became popular doesn't mean that you'll be able to commercialize it, right? Some of the things that may stop it from you being able to derive the value out of it is what I'm going to talk in this slide. But before that, let's talk about the journey of the product, right? So when you start an OSS system, the first thing that you need is a project community fit. What a project community fit is? Project community fit essentially says that there are people who are saying that, oh, this is valuable enough for us, and that's why we want to engage with you. They may engage by installing your system, they may engage by opening issues with you, they may engage by giving you some PRs, they may engage by updating documentation, they may even engage by talking about you with some of their friends, right? So there are different ways in which they are engaging. And this is called the project community fit, right? So that's where you might see open source installation growing, that's where you might see open source stars growing, right? Once you have this project community fit, now you have to talk about the product market fit, right? Because project community fit is great if you want to keep it OSS throughout. If you don't want to make any money out of it, great. It works fabulously well, right? But now because you want to make money out of it, you want to build a commercial company around it, you have to go through this journey where you would say, okay, what's the product market fit? Now, product market fit essentially says that now it should mature as a product, not as a project, but as a product, right? And project is something which people can use in their free time, right? But product is something which should be able to support them in production, in actual use cases, right? So that is where the product market fit starts happening, right? Can they see you as somebody who can support their production and their complex use cases? That's where the product market fit starts happening, right? The third final objection that you need to overcome is the value market fit, right? So what is a value market fit? Value market fit essentially is saying that now are people ready to pay money to you for this? That's the value market fit, right? And again, understand this thing, in the case of OSS, right? All these three things can be a reason for failure if you want to create a company around it. You may fail as a project community fit, you may fail at a product market fit, and finally you may even fail at a value market fit where people are using the product but they are still not paying enough to you, right? A lot of products have been able to get to a project market fit, product market fit, but value market fit has not been there because they had not been that big, complex products, right? So I'll talk about now like how I look at different capabilities which can stop you from moving from project community fit to a value market fit, right? The first for that is a feature or product, right? So from feature and a product, what I mean is how big is the use case that you're talking about? Is it a small use case? It's a big use case, right? So for example, I don't know how many of you know about Kubernetes, but in Kubernetes there is something called a Helm, right? It's very, very popular packaging system. Today, 96 to 98% of the companies which are using packaging system for Kubernetes, they are using Helm. But people have not been able to commercialize Helm. Why? Because it provides you limited functionality beautifully. And I can just pick it, start using it. I don't need to worry about any maintenance. I don't need to add 15, 20, 100 capabilities to it, right? So the problem that is happening is it's a small thing which works beautifully, but there is no way to extend it and make it bigger, right? And that's where they are failing. So nobody's trying to commercialize Helm, to be honest, right? And that's one of the reasons, because people are saying that, oh, it works beautifully well. Why should I even worry about paying about it, right? So you have to think about your product, how big the use case is. If it's a small use case, it may get a good budget community fit, but may be difficult to commercialize it, right? And on the reverse, if it's a very big use case, you should still start small, right? Because if you sort of launch a big thing together, people might find it difficult to adopt it, right? And this is one of the challenges that we faced as a Devtron, because we pivoted to an open source system after a year of existence, right? So we had built code for a year, a lot of code, and then we said that, oh, now we want to make it open source. So suddenly what we made open source was not something small, it was already big, right? So it was slightly difficult for people to reason through it as to what it is, right? Second thing is about the ease of maintenance, right? For that, the example is Nginx. I'm guessing if most of the people here are techies, then they would know about Nginx, right? Now, Nginx is a beautiful piece of technology, right? Every company, I think, would be using it. I would be surprised if there is a company which is not using Nginx, right? Cloud providers have built tons of things on top of Nginx. The problem with Nginx is that it just works. I drop it, I use it. Why should I pay for it, right? And that's where the problem started happening for Nginx, because people are using it, but people are not finding enough reason to pay for it, because it's very, very easy to maintain. I don't have to worry about it, right? Now contrast this with Elasticsearch or Kafka. You use it, you start using it, it's very easy to use, it's easy to get started, small instance, you can manage it, you are a small company, even if it goes down, you don't care much, and then you keep on building on top of it. And then when you become bigger, you figure out that, oh, this is one of the critical pieces in my overall solution that I provide to my customer. What do? Either you get people who are expert in that, who are going to be costly, or you outsource it, right? You may outsource it to cloud provider, you may outsource it to Elasticsearch, you may outsource it to A1 or some third party, but that's what you do, right? So ease of maintenance is another critical thing that you have to think of, again, please understand this, I'm not trying to tell you that you should deliberately make things complex. That's not the point. It's about the inherent complexity of the system. So as your system grows, the complexity should grow. As companies become bigger, for them the complexity of maintenance should become higher. You should not try to make it artificially complex, right? Because community will figure it out, and it would not just work for you, right? It would be worse to create an open source product. It's better to create a closed source in that case, right? And the third thing is, there is no clear demarcation between the features of which would be required by a smaller company vis-a-vis a larger company, right? Understand this thing again. Open source is becoming popular because companies feel that they don't have to pay money today, right? So if your product has features which you can provide to the open source, and they can use it without paying you today, and it's valuable for them, then they would sort of adopt your open source system. But if your features are paid features, so as a startup, let's say I have like 10 people working with me, and the feature that I need from your product requires me to pay today. For me, it's not open source. It's a paid system, right? I would not look at it from the open source lens, and that's why I may not adopt it as open source. But if it's something which I think that I might have to pay because there is a feature that I may need when I'll become 200 big organization, right? Then you might be okay adopting it today because you would think, oh, when I'll have 200 folks working with me, I'll be big enough, it's okay price to pay, right? So that is why for you, it becomes important that if your product has features which you can say that, oh, these are the features which are required by smallish companies, and these are the features which would be required for largest companies, then it becomes much more easier for you to commercialize, right? Because for these features, these companies will not care. They're saying, oh, this is not my worry. I can adopt your open source system. If I get to that level, I'll be okay with paying. And these companies are saying that, oh, I am fine with paying because these larger organizations, in fact, want to have a commercial support behind things, right? So they would be perfectly okay with paying. So these are some of the characteristics, if you look at it, that can help you figure out whether what I'm building in OSS, even if, let's say, it becomes popular in OSS, whether I'll be able to commercialize it or not. Right? And these are some of the things that we have also internally figured out at Devtron as to what are the things which are working for us, which are not the things which are working for us. As I was saying earlier, one of the advantages is if you're building with community, for the last thing, the no demarcation in feature, that is something that your community will help you figure out, right? Because community will give you feedbacks. If I'm sitting in a corner, I may think, oh, this is a feature which a large organization wants. Or this is a feature which a small organization wants, right? But if I go to the community, they'll exactly tell me like which feature they want and which feature they don't want. And it will be easier for me to figure out how to segregate it. Right, so, yeah, so this is the last slide. So I'm not a licensing expert, let me be clear about it, right? But I'm going to tell you like how we thought about licensing and how I think startups or the companies who want to commercialize OSS should think about licensing, right? Because what happens is there are few licenses which if you put those licenses in your repository, there is just no going back, right? So those licenses cannot be overridden at all. And then there are certain licenses which allow you to override them later on, so that if you want to course correct, you can course correct. And anybody who wants to use the code can fork from there, from where you change the license, right? Again, I'm not saying that changing license is a good thing and you should do it, but I'm just saying that if you are not very sure as to what kind of license you may want to do today, it's better to use those kind of licenses. For example, if I talk about the GPL kind of license, if you put GPL license in your repository, there is no turning back. There is no turning back. There is no other license which can override a GPL license. You'll have to stay with GPL license. There are a lot of open source projects which use GPL license, and I think it's perfectly okay if you know that that's what you want. It's perfectly okay. I'm by no means saying that GPL license cannot be commercialized, but the point is GPL license requires very different kind of commercialization compared to, let's say, if you have Apache 2 or MIT or SSPL, right? So the commercialization capabilities differ. So unless and until you are very, very sure that, okay, GPL is the right license for me, if you go for it, there is no turning back, right? Apache 2 is kind of a license which has become kind of a de facto license for companies who are looking at commercialization, because, how should I put it? It kind of gives you the best of the world, right? So it tries to strike the right balance between your capability to commercialize it, as well as the value that it provides to the users, right? And that's why Apache 2 has become one of the most used licenses currently in the open source world, right? In fact, one of the recent things which happened, I don't know, again, Lightband and Akka thing which happened. So Lightband earlier had Apache 2 license. They have recently shifted their license to BSL license. BSL license is a different kind of a license which is more helpful for commercial stuffs, but less for the open source kind of a thing. Elasticsearch, they changed their license to, now they support like dual license, Elasticsearch license version V2, as well as they support the SSPL license, right? My suggestion usually is when you are starting off, don't try to be too much creative with the license, right? One, license is not a place where you would want to spend tremendous amount of energy right at the get-go. As I said, there are enough licenses available which would sort of ensure that you are not going very wrong, right? But there are few licenses which I think you should not start with for various reasons, including that it sends out wrong signal to the community, right? So for example, the BSL license that I talked about, or the SSPL license. So SSPL license is the license which is promoted more by MongoDB. Elasticsearch also, as I said, some time back adopted it. Then there are tons of companies which are OSS and commercialized, which are adopting SSPL license. The problem with the SSPL license is that it's great for business. It's great for business. But OSI community believes that people who are using SSPL license are doing it for marketing per se and not for building a collaborative community, right? That's the belief of the OSI community, OSI, and that's why they have said that anybody who is using these licenses cannot claim that they are open source. So what that essentially means is if you're going to an open source summit and you are presenting about your software, you can't do that. They would say, oh, you are not open source. You can't do that, right? So that is why it is important that, as I said, it's good to stick with the basic ones. For example, we stuck with Apache 2 because we believe Apache 2 is the right license. It gives right kind of flexibility to us. At the same point of time, the people who are using us, they have complete control of the system because Apache 2 license allows them to do anything. There is, of course, one of the challenges with Apache 2, which SSPL, by the way, an Elastic license tried to solve. And that is saying that, oh, you are building the open source system today, but any of the cloud provider can actually commercialize it, right? Happened with Elasticsearch, happened with MongoDB, happened with tons of other systems. I think cloud providers are also changing a bit in that respect, wherein earlier they would simply use the open source system, may not even declare it. They would declare it only if it suits them. But over time, now I'm seeing that some of the recent agreements which happened even between AWS and the open source companies, they were kind of a commercial agreements where they said that, oh, we are going to pay you some subscription fees because we are using your open source system, right? Because otherwise for the open source, it became kind of a double whammy. You are building the core product as well as you are building those extra things to make it commercially viable, right? But the other company which is competing with you is not contributing in this core. Right? It happened with Elasticsearch. I think Elasticsearch is a prime example of it because there are so many commercial log aggregators which are out there, which are using Elasticsearch under the hood, and you don't even know that. Nobody knows it, and they are just doing that, right? And they are competing with Elasticsearch on that, and without contributing back to the Elasticsearch, right? So at a level that seems a bit unethical. But I think if you are doing things which are allowed by the license, it's not unethical, right? You just need to sort of figure out how to make the playing ground level up for you, right? So with this, I'll stop over here. If anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. If none, then that's okay. That's okay.
So, what is the differentiated value proposition of your company? I hope you were talking about differentiating.
No, I was not talking about our company. I was talking in general, if let's say if you are looking at pivoting an OSS project to a commercial company or planning to do that in future, then what are the things that you should look at? Just to be clear, so if you want to know about how we do it at our company, you want to know that?
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. If I have to map that to our company, so we are kind of a platform, right? Which makes things complex, inherently complex. Platforms are complex than libraries, right? So the complexity kicks in, right? The second thing is, for us, what we are saying is that because we want, we inherently, we have a belief wherein we are saying that, okay, so we provide, just to give you a context what Devtron does. So Devtron provides you a platform, open source platform, which allows you to manage your applications on top of Kubernetes, right? And we do that by integrating with other open source systems also, right? So we are not sort of reinventing everything. Now, we are in the DevOps domain. We are in the open source domain. Now, because we are working as a platform, we are integrating with multiple things and working across the life cycle, right? So that adds to the complexity of the system. Now, what we had seen in our experience also is that what happens is when a company is small, it's much difficult for a company to have a good DevOps system. When you become larger, for example, Netflix of the world, they are dumping millions of dollars to solve this problem. But a company which is like 100 million, 200 million, 500 million, they want to work on building the competitive advantage. And that's why we thought that we are not going to have a paywall. So we are not going to say that these are gated features, and if only you pay for it, you'll get access to this feature. Any feature which my commercial customer gets today, my open source community also gets same day. No difference, right? How do I earn? So as I said, because we are operating in a domain where there is an inherent complexity in the system. So if you are a small open source, you are using me, you would be using only 3-4 features, because the rest of the features you are saying, oh, too complex for me. They are not my worry today. For example, for security, you might not worry about security today as a small startup, but when you become bigger, that may become important for you, right? So what we have done is we have said that, oh, this is the complete platform, but I'll allow you to break it and pick pieces. So as a startup, you may pick only this piece, which is very easy to maintain. Now, over time, you'll keep on adding things. Now, you would have to put resources within your company to maintain it. Now, if I can do that for you at a much cheaper value, the ROI increases for you, right? Plus, I'm an expert because I'm the one who has built this product, right? So I can guarantee you better SLAs. I can guarantee you faster fixes. So because upgrading in open source is also a problem, right? You need to have teams doing it. Now, I am there, I can help you do that, right? So we charge for managed software. So if you want Devtron to manage its installation within your infrastructure, then we charge you. If you don't want us, then everything which is available to my commercial customer is available to you for free. Right? So this is how we also map for ourselves, saying that, okay, where do we lie in the matrix? Right? Had I been a very smallish company or a product which is a small product, I would have looked at it differently, because then I would have thought, oh, the maintenance complexity is never going to be there. Then why would they pay me? Right? So you have to figure that out.